Welcome back to the SAR Experience. Saul and Caleb, we are honored to have both of our dads here today. Dan Hochheiser and Ami Eden.
Yeah, but I think before we get started, if you don't know, we've been off the air for the past 2 days because Saul has been away at a baseball tournament in Columbus, and everyone should know that SAR did win that tournament. Big win. Everyone clap it up for Saul.
Had some big hits.
Go Sting.
If you have any, tell us about the trip a little bit.
I mean, honestly, a good thing about this trip, and last year we had two, is that the baseball team really gets so close in Columbus, and last year we had Boston before Columbus, so Columbus was like even closer. But this year, I don't think our team had really found our stride yet as like a unit. But now the whole team is so happy for each other, and it's such a different vibe than what I've been a part of before. So winning with a team that close is so special to me.
For sure.
Did you guys fly that or wheels?
We did fly it. It was nice.
I was gonna say, what's the tougher trip, the Columbus or the Deal for a basketball game?
Oh my God, Deal basketball games might be the worst things ever. There's nothing worse than going to Hillel.
There was a group of Frisch kids that took the drive up to Columbus.
Yeah, Frisch.
One SAR kid went with them, Sammy Glass. So
yeah,
shout out to him.
And to both of you, a question we ask all of our guests who all attend SAR is, well, why do you choose SAR? But for you guys, it's different. You guys are sending your kids here. So why did you both feel comfortable sending your kids to a place like SAR, and what went into that decision?
Well, Saul, as some people may know, is our third child. So we had two before him. We had a Jacob child who went to Ramaz, and we were thrilled with Ramaz. The education was fantastic, but Jacob was a different kind of kid who was very academically focused and no nonsense, and is not a kid who needs ruach and some of the flavor that you get at SAR, which makes the school so special. And he did great at Ramaz, and we were very pleased. My daughter, our middle child, went to SAR and flourished, and was a fantastic student, made great friends, loved the school, as did my wife and I. And we really let Saul decide where he wanted to go. And I think he felt most comfortable at SAR. I think it fit his personality, and it's been a great decision.
Awesome. Dad?
Yeah, I guess we have the similar sort of story. Caleb was the youngest of four. And I used to joke our kids they could pick between SAR, Frisch, and Ramaz as long as they didn't pick Ramaz. not to pick on Ramaz here, but that's more of an East Side, West Side thing. And basically, Caleb's the two oldest, his two older brothers picked SAR. Our daughter then differentiated and picked Frisch. So then really it came down to, Caleb deciding, and he really came down to the wire trying to decide between Frisch and SAR. So in a sense, we're pretty committed to letting our kids have some decision making. That said, I think we're pretty we're SAR kind of people. Like, I would definitely pick SAR if I was choosing between the schools. That would definitely be my choice.
I mean, you always talk about how you were very close to picking Frisch, but you couldn't be happy that you're at SAR now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love SAR. Would make the decision 10 times over again. And both of you guys mentioned how obviously we have siblings that didn't go to SAR. So curious what you guys would say, whether it's for Ramaz or for Frisch, from your perspective, what is the difference between SAR and those places? Yeah.
So I think the difference between Ramaz and SAR, from my perspective, is that Ramaz is more of like a prep school where everybody is academically intense. And of course, there's sports and there are extracurricular activities, and they do have fun, but there's a certain type of expected intensity and rigor. And I think it attracts a certain kind of student for that reason. Whereas SAR, I think you can breathe a little bit more. It's still extremely academically rigorous, as everybody knows who's gone here. But I think you can make of it what you want. You could kill yourself academically, or you could take it a little easier, and you can find your place. But I think what we're really blessed with in the New York metropolitan area is that you really have 3 day schools, Frisch, Ramaz, SAR, where you really can't make a bad decision. They're all three great schools that just have slightly different personalities, and I think it just depends on the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Caleb's heard this shtick from me 100 times, but I joke that it's like a Coke and Pepsi difference. Like to me, I laugh because like a lot of people want to make SAR and Frisch so different, and I'm always like, there might not be two schools in the universe that have more similar life outcomes for their students than SAR and Frisch. So I say it's a Pepsi. Like if you don't drink cola, there are not two things in the world more alike than Coke and Pepsi. But if you're like deep into cola drinking, there are no two things that are more different than Coke and Pepsi. Yeah. So look, a few things. I think obviously Frisch is bigger, which you think like what's the difference? But like the 140 or 50 versus the 240, 250, like you do feel it, but and some of it's good. And I would say the parts that aren't good, I think Frisch actually does a pretty good job managing. I think, so one thing, the hashkafa, like which has come up in some of your podcasts, I always viewed it as SAR has an ideology, which is basically one of the tenets of which is within however they see halacha in an orthodox way, SAR should push the envelope as much as possible when it comes to egalitarian women stuff. And I always view Frisch as basically saying our job is to reflect a consensus Orthodox view of the communities in Bergen County. And like that, so that's like a difference. And I think on the educational side, it's hard to put your finger on, but I feel like SAR is like the best version of a place that feels, I don't know what a little progressive or hippie or whatever in terms of the way they do education. And Frisch always felt to me a little bit more straight, but the best kind of straight you could have, right? And so like each of them has like a style and a personality that I think they're both sort of excelling. You know, some people like chocolate, some people like vanilla, but they're both really good at the things that are different about them.
Another thing I would just say in terms of the difference between Ramaz and SAR when you're making a choice from somebody who's from Scarsdale or New Rochelle is you can't discount the commute issue. And I remember when my son Jacob commuted to Ramaz, for a 9th grader, a 10th grader, you know, it's not easy commuting an hour each way, so 2 hours a day on a bus to Manhattan. It's just not as convenient as Riverdale. So I think that as a quality of life issue, that does come up.
Well, you always say to keep your commute short and your overhead low, no?
That's correct. He listened to something I said. Look at that.
So Saul, the second grade Caleb said to me, I'm going to Frisch. And I said, why? What do you think his answer was? 2 words. Wow. The gym!
Yeah, the Frisch gym, especially when you went there as a camper. Moshe Vabir was like the biggest thing in the world. But honestly, when I play there now, I never like think of it as like a good court.
I like our court. I don't know. The Frisch court seems too open to me, so it's not as loud in my opinion.
Right, you like the tight,
that's why
the hive
the
is
greenhouse
very,
at DRS I think is such a home court advantage because of how compact it is. So when you're at DRS, it's so loud compared to any other gym.
There was one play where I had to do an inbounds, but they were just overflowing onto the court, so the ref made me inbound it like in play. It was the weirdest thing ever. I don't know why that was allowed, especially because at SAR, I feel like they always make the fans move all the way back.
There's been a lot of basketball talk in this podcast. But we have a baseball like tournament winner. What's the hierarchy? Like, is it basketball and then everything else? Like, what's the hierarchy of
honestly,
sports in SAR?
The way, there's 2 ways to answer that question. For the players, I think, as there's a bunch of overlaps, me, Jonah Blechner, Avery Simon, probably a few others I'm forgetting that do multiple sports. I think most kids give it their all for that sport, and then they'll switch over at
Which
the end.
sport do they give their?
So I'm in basketball season, right? I'm only thinking basketball. But the second baseball starts, now I'm flipped. Even though they did overlap a little bit. It's tough to do both, in my opinion. But as the school goes, varsity basketball always will reign supreme. I mean, even
so what's second?
Yeah, hockey, I would assume.
Boys, varsity hockey.
I mean, even on the SR Instagram.
Floor hockey or hockey?
floor hockey, but the ice hockey team is making.
Benefit would love
I mean, yeah, there is. We do have an ice hockey team, and I think it's gaining more and more stature.
It is.
I'll just say as somebody who did not grow up in this world, the lamest thing about the Yeshiva League was I'm in New York for a few years, and all these Yeshiva League grads I know talking up like hockey, how big hockey is, and then like it took me a little while to understand that when they were talking about hockey, they meant floor hockey.
Yeah.
And then I had to tell them all, just so we know, when I talk about how my school is great at soccer, like we didn't use our hands, like it was soccer, it was outside, we kicked the ball, it was soccer.
Dad, you played hockey all your life, no?
Well, I played public school ice hockey, so I have restrained myself, and I don't want to criticize the floor hockey players. I know they're into it. My daughter actually played SAR floor hockey and loved it.
So good.
She was aggressive, and she started.
She did.
She was good.
I mean, our friend Benefit, we go, okay, so like the floor hockey team, and the ice hockey team. He goes, no, there's a floor hockey team and there's a hockey team.
I don't mind. I'm not saying floor hockey is lame. I'm saying calling it hockey and then elevating it to this like stature without ever letting on that it's floor hockey. But maybe everybody just knows that, and I, as the out of town Philly guy, just didn't understand, but everybody else understands.
No, here when you say hockey, the first thought is floor hockey, and it's funny that you mentioned that Mara played floor hockey here, because before high school, I didn't know that girls playing floor hockey existed, because at MDS, girls never had a floor hockey team. So I heard freshman year that there's like a girls floor hockey team. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But
you guys both mentioned your backgrounds at your own high school. So what do you think are the key differences that you see? I mean, there's probably so many between your guys' high school experience and what you see us go through.
Wow, where to start? I mean, I don't know about Ami, but I went to Mamaroneck High School, which is a public school in Westchester, not too far from here. And, it's completely different because you only have the secular education. I mean, Jewish kids like me went to Hebrew school 3:30 to 5:30 twice a week, until we had our bar mitzvah. But, for high school, basically you go to school till 2:50 with secular classes, with a mix of kids. Not everybody's Jewish, there's Christians, there's all kinds of people as a mix. And then if you play sports, then you go to practice for a couple hours after school, and then you go home and you do your homework. But there's no, Judaica. There's no, studying Tanakh or Gemara or, Hebrew. If you take a foreign language, you take Spanish or French. It's just night and day. I think the education here overall is probably better to a large extent, although that was a very good education too. But you're getting the whole ball game. You're getting the Judaica and you're getting the secular. So, on that basis, from my perspective, for my kids, it's superior.
Well, I was actually talking to Coach Jaffe. He was on my Columbus trip. He went to New Rochelle High School for his high school years, and I know you may have experienced the same thing. But he was saying fights every day, and there's nothing you can really do about it, and it's just a much crazier scene because of you don't have to get into these high schools really. You kind of just go. So there's no background check, and everyone is just who they are. So would you say it's maybe a little more chaotic?
A little more, a little more rough and tumble because you have more of a mix, and it's also a different time. When you're talking about the '80s. I assume we're around the same age. It was just a different time, no cell phones, less supervision. Our parents really never knew where we were ever. Until we came home for dinner.
So, but on the parent point, and you're right, I have to control for the phone stuff, but it does seem to me that when a difference, and I'm saying this with no direct experience, that's why I'm asking you, it feels like in a private school, and sometimes this is good and sometimes it's bad, you have the customer or the parents. And in a public school, it's kind of like, so you were saying like everybody can just go. Like that also means the parents aren't paying. I'm wondering like, do you feel it like where parents are a bigger presence in these sort of, in our kids' schools than perhaps they were when you were in public school? Or no, parents in your public school were just as, had just as much attitude about what was going on, what wasn't going on, a sense of entitlement because their kid was in the school?
I think that I think today things are more difficult for kids in terms of pressure. I think back when I was growing up, there wasn't this, sort of raison d'etre. The whole, goal of parenting was to make your kid into an Ivy League college kid and get them tutors and this private course and this SAT course, et cetera. It was sort of like you found your way, and some kids were talented and some were less so, and some were more academically inclined and some less. But I think it was sort of a less intense way to grow up, where parents weren't as much helicoptering as they are today. My parents never knew what my homework was, ever. I mean, I happened to be a pretty good kid and I did my homework, but you were more on your own in that regard than I've seen with private school. And obviously, having involved parents is very important.
Yeah, and like when you break the dress code and something like that, now the email that automatically gets sent at the end of the day also goes to your parents.
Oh, well, I get 4 or 5 emails a week about something, and my dad emails me every time saying, like, what are you doing?
Well, I'm actually going to make a special request of the administration that after Saul graduates, if they could continue to send me an email a day about his infractions, about somebody's infractions. I'm just going to miss them every day.
But maybe there's actually a fee you can play where they'll continue to monitor his infractions wherever he is. You can still get that.
Every day.
Maybe TVA will send you a few emails.
Right. And I didn't have that with my first 2 kids.
Right. So I went to Akiba Hebrew Academy, which is now called Barak Hebrew Academy, it was a community school, so more like a Heschel in terms of religious. So first of all, the first funny thing is the note you got sent home if there was a problem was called an Akibagram, but that was also the name of the student newspaper. Yeah. It would be like calling your student newspaper the detention slip. Like, why? They then changed it to Cougar Chronicle. It was like the craziest thing. So I would say Akiba was a lot. I said it was like Heschel, but in the vibe, I feel like it was actually more like SAR not in terms of the religiosity, but in terms of I would say the nature of the educational style, very like down the earth, laid back. Like we had like the main building was like a house. I mean, that was an added on thing. So it's like more of a chill environment and very we didn't call it the grand conversation, but I would say most people who go to Akiba would say like the idea of like questioning things was like really central. Religiously, night and day. I mean, I would say I didn't even have it's not just that it wasn't a firm school. Like I didn't even understand really that concept. So I'd say one big thing is the level of Judaic knowledge, especially text, that you guys are walking away with. Even the basic student here is like light years beyond, and maybe not when it comes to Jewish history or things like that, but I'm just talking about like Gemara and that kind of stuff. It's just night and day. Another big thing for me, sports was the time where I felt the most aggressively Jewish. Mm-hmm. It's the only time I ever encountered anti-Semitism sometimes when we played, and all the other schools we played were not Jewish schools. Yeah. So it's like whiplash when I get to see you guys, and sports is like this very parochial, very Jewish-only thing, whereas like the exact opposite. Like that's when we played all types of other kids. Once in a while I had pennies thrown at us, that kind of stuff.
Well, so, I always, growing up in a secular place and going to public school, you always felt Jewish and the other. And even playing ice hockey, I mean, we would have games, Jews against the Catholics. I mean, that is so wrong on so many levels.
You guys didn't win, right?
And no, of course not. No.
Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean within your school?
Within the team. On the varsity team or the JV team, you play a scrimmage, Jews against the Catholics. Right. I don't think any coaches were involved, and we just set that up ourselves. But,
when I was like 8 years old, my dad schlepped me down to South Philly, Sabres, Little League Baseball, all these Italian and Irish Catholics, and like a couple Jews. Yeah. And the first practice, the kids say to me, "Hey, what's your parish?" Yeah. And I give the worst answer I could have given. what's a parish?
Right.
Well, I had the same thing growing up. I was on the team called the Westchester Cardinals. Me, Jonah Black, and Ari Halpert, only 3 Jews. The rest of them are Italians. All Italian Catholics with Ostuni, Lamata. I thought guys. And,
Great kids,
and
by the way.
I will say one other difference, which may not be this might be something that you didn't have. Like, my school was small. Like, my graduating class had 45 kids. So you guys are, like, sitting there with 4 times as many kids, 3 to 4 times
No,
as
we
many
had.
kids.
I had 400.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
so...
I mean, I personally think that having the Yeshiva League, I feel like makes it more intense instead of playing schools that people that you don't know at all and like, you're never going to see.
There's
it.
inherent rivalries when you
Yeah.
play kids and you're also playing them in camp and you're playing them.
Right.
And then sometimes the school, if you have like
but that
siblings
goes the
also.
other way. Like, you guys are all buddies.
But
You
that's
know,
what
there's
makes
a-
that's
that's
what
what
makes
makes
it
it
so
so
that's what makes it so
intense.
much fun because
Yeah.
then on the court you're not, and then you get to go at it. And a big problem that we've been talking about multiple times in the podcast is the substance issue. So curious how it was back in your day.
We had substance issues.
Well, I'm saying I kind of
We had no substance issues, and there are no substance issues in this group.
I feel like people weirdly. I could be so wrong about this, but in my head, there's a lot more hard alcohol consumption in our community than there was back in the day. I feel like it used to be more beer centered.
Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think that, in high school, I recall, mostly beer. First of all, it was a lot cheaper. I'll date myself. In the suburbs, if you're a teenager in Westchester, if you get a case of Peels for $2.99 that somebody's older brother got for you, and you go to the park with some of your friends, that's an evening.
Allegedly.
Right.
No, I wasn't involved in that. No. No, I don't remember a lot of
You didn't
single malt
have
scotch.
you didn't have
Scotch.
venue parties. No, right.
We didn't know the word venue.
Your house was the venue, no?
My house was the place.
I would say, I feel like, it felt, I don't know, there were definitely like a lot of kids doing things, but it definitely felt just a little more basic.
Relax.
Like
the
people
school-
are drinking beer,
Were
or
the
they
schools
might
making
maybe
like a really big deal out of
yes,
it? Yeah.
but I felt like they made a big, they would make a big deal if there was anything. Like I don't know. I feel like it feels like, first of all, there were no dispensaries.
That's
Like
true.
it's like
And weed wasn't really.
Well,
big.
there were, but just not legal.
right.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying
Now
like,
you walk
it
the streets
wasn't-
in New
yeah,
York.
it
there's
every
one
other
block.
block, yeah.
yeah, I'm just So
We
and
don't
also
know,
the
yeah.
drunk driving thing, like the drunk driving
Yeah.
thing became like a real thing in the 80s. Not like awareness of it, focus on it. Remember, you had Nancy Reagan like doing a whole "Just Say No" campaign. It's like the whole culture was very like focusing on substance issues. But I have to believe that the level of substance at that time and the sophistication of the substances were like much less. And I don't think like people in my high school were doing like coke or anything. Like, I think it was pretty basic.
So
like,
in terms of the drunk driving, we had an organization, I don't know if it still exists, called Safe Rides. Have you ever heard of that?
I don't know.
So that's what we had back in the day, Safe Rides. And like I did shifts for it, and the concept is that you had upperclassmen who would be on call Saturday night, and or Friday night too, probably, and this is a secular school. If there's a kid who's at a party in high school who's drunk and doesn't want to drive, you call Safe Rides, no questions asked, and they'll take you home, which was a great system, which dealt with that drunk driving issue pretty well. The other thing that was different, getting back to our conversation about private school and the way I went to school and public school, when I went to school, everything was local.
Yeah.
I always walked to every school or rode my bike to every school. There were no friends in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Everybody
every
was
time
local.
Every time I'm going out to New Jersey, I'm like, I'm going out to Englewood. You're going out to Englewood? It's like 45 minutes away sometimes.
right. And there were no narratives. There was not like when you're talking about stuff like everything. What did we have? Like we had TV with like 3 channels and like and you
weren't worried about getting
no, and like
videoed
you read the
somewhere.
newspaper. There was no like now every single thing is so any kind of problem is so
exaggerated,
magnified,
yeah.
so hash, and you guys have full access to the discourse, and you're even driving the discourse, right? Like you're posting things that then parents are saying, oh, you see our kids or something. Like there was That did not. There was no version of that.
If we wanted
when
to know
kids.
something, we had to look in an encyclopedia. Have you ever heard of an encyclopedia?
I've
No,
never
and
looked
even then,
inside
though,
one.
it wasn't. It had no currency. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
I deleted all my tweets on Twitter. They weren't even about anything bad. They're all about sports.
It's
but
not worth the risk.
keep my digital footprint low.
Right. I just feel like if there was, oh, I heard this kid had pot in their car. It was like a massive deal that would be like an urban legend. And here it's like you guys could go online and like how many posts are there a day on social media about this? And by the way, kids at other school, like you have so many. It's so magnified. Like, you know what's happening in all the other schools. And so much more. You probably know more about stuff happening in other schools in some ways than I may have known what was happening with some of the people in
there's
my
something.
school.
Those will be stuff that happens in a school, and you'll get a text 2 minutes later from a kid at Frisch or Ramaz.
Oh,
like,
yeah, right.
which has happened.
Yeshiva League is so intertwined with that.
Right.
It's
Like,
impossible to...
I don't know if is that Yeshiva League specific or just phones in general, or a mix of both.
I suspect,
Like,
I'm
obviously mix of
sure
both,
you
but-
guys have more connections with, because you guys mentioned before the overlap with camp, and you guys went to elementary school. Like you have all these friends at these other schools, and I'm just saying everything is just like bigger, more magnified.
Right. So if you go to school at Mamaroneck High School, you don't know the kids in New Rochelle High School. No. You don't know the kids at Scarsdale High School, basically, unless you have some connection. But you guys know, everybody knows everybody. When you go play sport, when you play basketball, when you play baseball, you know all the kids on the other team from summer camp and from wherever.
Right. But it's fun. I'll just shout out my dad. He was, and this was not because his kids got into substance problems, because we didn't. He was very dogmatic and like angry at the school anytime they like punished kids for what he felt was like stupidity. You know, like when I was in 9th grade, a whole bunch of seniors got caught splitting, like 10 seniors got caught splitting a 6-pack at like a school Shabbaton and got put on probation, which meant they were off all the teams for like all the fall sports. Yeah. And my dad was just like, he couldn't, you know, he went and he complained at some parent meeting about it. And he's like, I chaperoned a school dance and caught kids smoking pot. And I didn't turn them in because I knew if I did, you guys would do something stupid like this. So like my dad's whole thing was like, I don't know how real the substance problems was, but he thought the problem was schools being stupid and being overly draconian how they handle it.
I have heard stories of teachers say like they've caught kids on Shabbatons or something, or seen kids do stuff, and they just decide to stay out of it, which I kind of respect. I mean, maybe they should.
Right, until something bad happens. Yeah. Then it's like, why didn't you say something?
But I also think that the punishment in your school is just objectively you're punishing other kids also.
Right.
So even
except the other kids got more minutes. We lost more games, but they got more minutes.
It's true. So going back to our generation, what do you guys think is the biggest problem with us?
I feel like all old heads, per se, quote unquote,
definitely have an answer to that question.
Feel our generation maybe is lazy or too addicted to our screens, which is definitely true.
But everybody's bad. But that's
not
generational because we didn't have screens. Everybody, like adults, are also addicted to the screens. So it's not a function of like your generation. It's a function of phones dropping.
I think actually you guys are lucky in this iPhone world that we live in that you have Shabbos, right? Because, you know, the secular world doesn't have Shabbat, so at least you have a guaranteed 25 hours a week where, you know, you live like we used to live before the technology, which is so important. And also, you guys are so busy with school and sports, et cetera, that you're not constantly glued to your screens, which is very positive. But, I mean, I shake my head. I was taking a walk yesterday around my block, and I see 3, you know, kids quite a bit younger than you guys, I don't know, 10, 12, 14, whatever they are, and 3 kids riding their bikes, all with one hand with a phone, the other on the handlebars, and looking at their screen as they're sort of slowly riding their bike. And to me, it's just a shame that that's what we've become. A kid should just ride their bike.
I mean, at my haircut recently, which is right where you grew up in Larchmont, but I'm sitting waiting to get my haircut, and these kids come in with these big mini iPads with like a handle on them. They don't look up when they walk in. they just sit down, they stay glued to the screen, and they get their haircut as they watch something on their iPad.
Right.
And I get it that the parent is probably just wanting them to stay quiet during the haircut and not cause troubles, but I think it's my kid's not going to be doing that. I thought about it so much.
Well, I don't think it's only a kids thing. I actually,
You think it's trickled down?
It's trickled down.
I think it's
So many
adults have the
parents
same. I
always
mean, I
on
was
their phones with the kids.
my wife. She just changed jobs. She got a new job, so she came home last night, and I figure, okay, I'll sit with her for a minute while she eats and find out how the job is, etc. And her phone kept binging and beeping and whatever, and I got a little annoyed because I'm trying to talk, and the phone is beeping and buzzing and this and that, and it's not just kids; it's adults that have to navigate this technology, which interrupts our focus and makes it so it's challenging to have quality conversations without doing 8 things at once.
Yeah, especially with the barbershop. I feel like the old image of a barbershop is like everyone going in like talking, but now I feel like they're always just kind of dead.
Yeah, there's
silent.
like a whole barbershop conversation thing.
Yeah,
that's like a real discourse. It used to be you go in, you have a talk with your barber, he talks to you.
And now it's just TVs in every single chair, and everyone just glued to their phone.
That you mentioned that we get a day off, and also like mom's phone always binging. Do you think that having Shabbos also helps you guys with your careers? I remember Max Baker's dad, Corey Baker, came in to speak to us, and he was saying how there were points where he may have had slip-ups, but once he really focused on Shabbos, that it helped his work life because he got a day off where he didn't have to worry about it, and that it would help him like get that reset and clear his mind for his upcoming week. So do you guys feel it has that same impact?
Well, as somebody who didn't grow up as a Sabbath observer, I can say 100% unequivocally that Shabbos is a gift, and if you have it, which you guys do, you should hold on to it tightly and never let it go because it is great on so many levels. It is a recharge. It's good for the family to spend time. It's good professionally so you can recharge your battery and get off the treadmill, give yourself time to think. It's humane, and I just that's one of my favorite aspects of being an observant modern Orthodox Jew is that you have Shabbos, and for those 25 hours, the world can't touch you, and you're you have your own time for you, for your family, and to just live because the world is full of pressures and pressures to financially and otherwise. So especially as a young person going out to the workforce, and I know this from my oldest son who's in finance, when he was in investment banking, Shabbos was unbelievable because he'd be working till 4 o'clock in the morning every night, but along comes Friday, and now he's got time, whereas his colleagues did not. Yeah. So it's a great thing.
Yeah, I have I don't have a ton to add to that, and especially for me, Shabbos is more personal in the sense that I work in Jewish media. Yeah. So
most
there's like a build. Well, not that most people. It's not that most people are Shomer Shabbat, but that it's a given. It's built in. So it's not like I'm having a countercultural experience, or it's for better or for worse. But all the personal benefits you talked about, and professionally in terms of the recharging, yes. But I didn't like some people like when you're saying like if you're in a firm or something, depending on the nature of that firm, it can be a benefit, it could be worse, etc. I didn't have to really deal with.
Well, I always discussed with Jacob. I asked him recently. I said, "What do I do about being Jewish when I go to the workforce? Do I say in the interview that I'm going to be observing Shabbat and that on weekends I won't be able to be contacted?" And apparently the move is you just don't say anything, and then it's discrimination if they don't allow you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it depends. I think that's a judgment call. It depends on the job. I mean, you certainly don't want to take a job where going in that Saturday is the biggest day for that business, and they need you to work on Saturday. So
you're not going to be a college you're not going to apply for an assistant college football.
Right,
my sister Mara took a job at a country club and was like, "Oh, I can't work Saturdays." And my dad was like, well, that's the day for country clubs. That's kind of,
Right.
you can't really do that.
On that, you remember that Tuesday where they had like the big conference and they like canceled like school? We had like those,
What conference?
like the amidst via amidst
Oh,
thing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
one of the panels that I went to was like Jews in the workplace, and all of them were like going into the story of like how they told their bosses how they were Jewish. And I'm pretty sure most of them were like, oh, just like you tell them during the interview and then see what happens. And I also remember that in my YU half day last year, like when SAR came in, they gave us like a little tour and like a sit down. The guy who's at the head of SAR Sims was telling us how at SAR Sims they like purposely teach you like how to deal with that issue. Which I thought was
I think
interesting.
that is cool. Touching on the colleges in Judaism, what do you guys think? Me and Caleb aren't going to specific schools that you might be thinking about that have had anti-Semitism, but how do you guys feel about the college process in the Yeshiva League world where we're still sending kids to these places, like a Columbia, who just had their president, I think, speak at a graduation and get heckled the entire time. I'm not even sure she was really even able to make a speech, just constant booing because of what happened in the library. And we're still sending kids to those places. And Columbia actually accepting a lot of Jews now because I think they feel bad. But what do you guys feel about people still applying there?
Well, I was actually very impressed and persuaded by Michael Courtney's discussion on your podcast on this issue. I thought he was extremely eloquent about it, and I agree with him, although I'll put a caveat onto my opinion. I think what Big Mike said is exactly right, that, if Harvard and Columbia and Penn are the places where the biggest corporations and industry is going to provide the biggest opportunities for people, then our kids belong there, particularly since over history we were excluded for a period of time before we were allowed to go in as Jews. And now that we're in, we shouldn't be pushed out or intimidated because of anti-Semitism or Hamas sympathizing students. On the other hand, selfishly, as a parent, I'm fortunate my kid is now going to Indiana where they don't really have those issues so far, thank God. But I wouldn't be thrilled to pay $90,000 for my kid to go to NYU or Barnard or Harvard, one of these schools where they take over libraries and they surround Jewish kids and taunt them. So there's a tension there because you are paying for a product and you don't want to pay for anti-Semitism exposure. On the other hand, you don't want to be intimidated and you want your kid to have every opportunity. So I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I think that it's encouraging that we are sending kids to some other schools besides just Binghamton and Maryland. And now hopefully Indiana is going to become a place you can go and perhaps some other schools so that we'll have some more choices.
It's all on you, Saul.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Caleb's two older brothers went to Brown and University of Chicago, and then Caleb is going to YU, and his sister went to YU, and both decided that pretty early in 11th grade. So it was like a very different experience. I agree about the idea that we should lean in, not run away, but the kids should do what they want to do. And it's interesting, like my oldest, who's politically conservative in a bunch of ways, really loved his time at Brown. I also went to Brown, and I will say at his graduation it was very uncomfortable. The degree to which the speakers and that we're referencing, and I definitely felt as a parent and as an alum on the outs of that experience. But that was like a few hours for me. That was my total experience. For Ben, he was there for 4 years, and 95% of it he loved. So why would I tell him don't have that experience? But the flip side, it was when Caleb was like, why would I go somewhere where they hate Jews? I'm not gonna, if that's better for him. I do agree. It's crazy that all the kids in the Yeshiva League are trying to go to like a handful of schools in a highly competitive environment. And so, yeah, it's only it's only for a lot of reasons it makes sense to try to build religious Jewish life at more campuses so that it's easy. There's more options, and it's easier to go to a school that's a good school that has a supporting Jewish environment. So I think that's really important. Even if all of this other craziness wasn't going on, it would make sense for the Yeshiva League schools to try to work with some other universities to just widen. Yeah. You know, as a kid who went to a Jewish school, high school I mentioned before, and it wasn't a Orthodox school, and I was not religiously observant. There's just like all these other schools that kids would go to that I feel like
you just got to pioneer it. That's the
right,
big thing.
That's what I'm saying. You guys have to build it, right?
And when I was discussing with my parents, because Indiana doesn't obviously have the strongest Jewish population, but they are, even before I applied, they are trying to grow it. And I was telling my parents that I think it's a very important thing that colleges that Jewish kids can apply to expands, because it's so frustrating unless you have a 4.0, you're applying to like 3 schools. You're applying to Maryland, Bing, maybe Baruch, NYU if that's something you want to pay for, Rutgers. Like, you're not getting into Michigan, Washington. That's not an option for everybody. So to expand the choices at which Jewish kids can apply to is very important. I mean, even UF is getting into that mix, but UF is also now just becoming a Michigan where it's impossible to get into. Right. So I think that's a huge thing. And, you know, Cam's going to YU.
Yeah, I mean, bringing it back to SAR and school in general for us, I always hear a lot about parent-teacher conferences. It's rarely positive things, but I'm curious what you guys think about parent-teacher conferences.
Well, you're a parent-teacher conference star, aren't you?
I'm gonna let Ami go first.
First of all, I'll just tell you, a couple times my kids had Mr. Krause.
Uh-huh.
And every time we sat down with him, I always started with the same joke. I say, wait, are we here for Teva? Because he was the nature instructor at their overnight camps. I always break the joke. That was probably the only thing I liked about parent-teachers conferences. No, I mean, it's so funny. It's like
just that one joke.
No, it's basically watching them shave it a minute. You know, it's like it gets shorter and shorter.
Yeah. And
amazingly, each time, I should be happy, but I'm like antsy. Like, wait, when's this? Because if there's something really to discuss, you're not really hearing about it at parent-teachers conference. So the parent-teachers conference becomes, you know, it's
like
just
a compliment sandwich. It's what he does well, something he can improve on.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, look, it's much better now that it's on Zoom. Yeah, because your level of you're not schlepping out and you're running around to got to run to the next one to make, and you don't want to. And by the way, that at Frisch it was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because
so many kids,
and so much space you got to cover. So it's fine, but I don't know that if there is. Even as they make it less and less time, somehow I still feel like, why are we doing this?
I mean, they have the second semester on optional. Maybe eventually there's both going to be optional.
I feel like this was the gotcha question of the podcast to make me look terrible because I'm not a great parent-teacher attender. I send my wife, and she takes care of this aspect of the family for the most part. I have been to some parent-teacher conferences, but I'm a junior partner in the academic
plays
situation.
A non-speaking / non-attending role.
Well, sometimes I've gone to parent-teacher conferences, and before the conference, before we start meeting with the teacher, my wife will tell me, you're not to say anything.
Yeah, I had an issue with my 5th grade teacher, and my mom made sure he had a non-speaking role, so he sat there politely.
Well, and by the way, and because I guess this is SAR being SAR, even when I get when my antenna go up and I get a little like ready to rock, what'll happen? They'll be, well, we'll just say Caleb, but it could be any of my kids. They'll apologize. Don't read this the wrong way, but like, it could be once in a while. It'd be nice if he was like a little more zoned in or a little less talking. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I should give a talking to. No. Chas v'shalom. I don't mean that. It's like, so what are we doing here?
In my with my 6th grade parent-teacher conferences, my math teacher at WDS, who had previously taught my brother, who's 8 years older than me, my sister's 4 years older than me. My dad finally came into a teacher conference. He goes, "Hey, I'm Saul's dad." He goes, "Yeah, I taught Jacob and Mara. Don't worry, I know."
I would say, but you guys think it's probably more vital for middle school, or more crucial for middle school, or do you guys?
Did I say that?
No, I'm just curious. I would assume, but
I don't know.
I think it depends on the kid. You know, one of the I'm going to give myself a little bit of a defense to my neglect, because my first two children, who were both straight A students, and Jacob was a quiet kid, and I would go to all these parent-teacher conferences and schlep back from Manhattan to make the conference, and they would just tell me what a great kid he was. And Mara was the same thing, she getting all A's, et cetera.
I kept things exciting.
And then we got to Saul, and there were some issues. But you know, for the most part, my wife, who's quite competent, handles
yeah,
it.
I really wonder if there was a way to, well, I'd say, I mean, one of the things that's different about like elementary school is that often you might have a teacher who's with the kid all the time. And, so you might, like, the conversation you're having feels more holistic. And it's like I almost wonder if there's a way you could somehow streamline it so there's one longer conversation with somebody who can really talk to you holistically about your kid. As opposed to, like, do I really need to know, like, oh, there's a specifically little thing happening in math, and it's like, it's all in 3 minutes, and it's like, what are we getting out of that? As opposed to, like, and I don't know how this would work, but, like, if you had, like, one faculty, like, if every kid had a faculty advisor who was basically coming to you and saying, here's the basics we're seeing about your kid, strengths, weaknesses, you know, and not so micro, some piece of Narishkeit, good or bad, that's not really the big picture, but could have a big picture conversation about your kid and how they could be, you know, always improve. Like, that might be valuable.
I never even thought about how, as you said in elementary, that one person's with it the whole day, and now here it's 17.
you could be
different
such
teachers.
a good student in one class and then be the complete
Oh
opposite
yeah, I'm
in
like
another
that.
class.
Right.
My academic, I guess, rigor. Nah, that doesn't make sense. The amount of attention I give to some classes compared to others would be hard to decipher if not for those different parent-teacher conferences, I would say. And if Miss Kadisha is listening, she'll know. In Gemara, I'm way more fun and playful, but then when you get to macro, I'm very.
You might be making the case against me that there is value.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
I don't know.
I mean, other than.
But my point is, nothing's going to emerge from that 3-minute conversation. That's going to change the dynamic, or that's going to, you know.
Yeah.
And especially because, as I said, the teachers don't want us to get. It feels like they don't want us to get mad. So it's not like they're coming and saying, "I need you to do this."
They have 3 minutes, and I don't think the teachers want to be there either. So
it's a mutual feeling.
What if instead of the parent-teacher conferences, they just sent us an email?
Well, that's
Well, I always say that.
And then have a. So what they do? They
That's
get
the progress
report
report.
card. You get your progress report. Right.
Everything can be sent in an email nowadays. You never really need a call. Sometimes people call me, I'm like, that could be sent in a text. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, for sure. I would say that other than looking forward to the yearly Mr. Krause joke, is there a specific teacher that you kind of get excited for if you see him on the roster?
Well, this is a little bit of a cheat, but I would say I go back years from the Upper West Side days with Rabbi Hain, and we don't get to see. He used to be one of the rabbis at one of our shuls, so even though he usually has not he maybe. I can't remember.
I switched out early. I don't know if I was
Ben
before.
and one of my kids had him, but like basically it's a nice chance. I just, I see him and we chit chat, and I don't usually get to see him. So it's more about like that. That's more.
I thought you were going to say Mr. Zamir, honestly.
Mr. Zamir is great. No, I'll tell you this. I love when we have sit downs with Mr. Friedman.
Our teacher?
Yeah, because
I gave him a little what's up downstairs.
Yeah, and what I will say, let me just say, what I really admire about Mr. Friedman is that, like, let's face it, like that's a topic where
people might not feel engaged.
Well,
art teacher. By the way.
People have skills.
Yeah.
That probably play out in every class, but I feel like if you're the art teacher, it's probably pretty clear, pretty quick, that there's a handful of kids who are like gifted and focused, and then the rest of them are not. But I feel like he brings an energy, and I'll just say I had kids who were not necessarily naturally or by choice focused on art, But when we met with him, there was a sense of like he's taking an attitude that every student has like an art neshama, and that's what he's going to focus on. And like you would talk to him, and you could think that he was teaching an honors art class with a bunch of artists. The level of passion he brought to it, the seriousness he took your kid's project, but not in a soul-crushing, like discipline way that he's turning art into like a, like he's trying to make it militaristic or something. Just like a passion and love that feels. He wasn't mailing it in.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that's a class where like you could get away with it, and it would be okay.
I think you take a far different approach from my dad, as when my sister had Dr. Fang as a teacher, who's I think he teaches like every science now. But my dad walked in and goes, "So what's your favorite element?" That was the first thing he said.
We're going to try to pass by that. We'll edit that out in post. Actually, I do want to tell a quick story about how I met Rabbi Jay Kroll, which I think says a lot about the character of the school. My father, Saul's grandfather, passed away in October 2022. I'd never met Rabbi Jay Kroll before. I didn't know who he was. Maybe I knew the name, but I never met him. And I was sitting Shiva up in northern Westchester at my mother's, and my mother is not Orthodox. And so anybody who's wearing a kippah or who's coming to the house up in the country is coming for me. Mm-hmm. And there's this guy coming with a kippah, and I don't recognize him. Who's this guy? And it's 35 minutes north of where I live anyway. He comes in, and it's Rabbi Kroll. That's how I met him. He had never met me, and he drove whatever it was, 40 minutes or an hour from wherever he was, to come pay a shiva call to a parent of the school who he'd never met. Mm-hmm. He didn't have to come. I never expected to come. And I was so knocked out by that gesture. He's such a, first of all, you can't compete with Rabbi Kroll. He's a guy who donated a kidney to a stranger. Legendary. So compared to him, I'm just a mere mortal. But I just was really...
He just did a shiva visit. He didn't give you a kidney. I don't know what you're making. I don't know why you're playing this up so much.
Only because I didn't ask him for a kidney.
Fair enough.
We would have given it.
I want to say one thing about the teachers' conference, because I want to definitely clarify this. The one thing that does come through is that, like, how many of the teachers, and there's like a pretty consistent, I'd say, vibe there of how seriously they're taking it, how seriously there's like an SAR brand and like approach to things that come out. It's just, I already buy it. Like, check. I know. So I don't need it. Right. I don't need the teachers' conference to know that. But I will say that probably is what comes out much more than what I learned about my kid, is just like a reaffirmation that you see and a reminder that there's like a real philosophy and approach to things that are going on, and a seriousness about the craft that they're doing. And so that's, as a paying parent, it's good to know. But it's like, yeah, I don't need them doing all this for me. Yeah.
I have a question. Is this podcast part of the grand conversation?
We were talking about that exact question with Jacob and Max.
Yeah, we were talking about. I forgot. We were just saying that this is our grand conversation.
I think we came to the conclusion that everyone has their own grand conversation, and this is our grand conversation.
Because it started with nobody really knows what it is, but then it's kind of like what you make of it.
Are we going to get into some of your grand conversation issues that you guys have been hitting?
I mean, yeah, we got to say that there's
newspaper article.
There's the SAR controversies, whether it's the Buzz article or there's Women Tefillin, and I'm just curious what you guys think when you hear everyone going crazy about these things, and if there's anything specific you guys want to touch on. And also, it's kind of a second part to the question, but obviously me and Saul have the duty to like defend SAR to other students. I'm curious if that's a thing that you guys as parents see yourselves doing often, or maybe it's different in different communities, but...
A little bit. I think there's a little bit of the, SAR is so leftist, liberal, not orthodox. Like, it comes up a little bit, especially in I'll tell you when it comes up, really. is when we have a kid who's in 8th grade and they're choosing, or somebody who's choosing, and they're like, I'll send my kid to Frisch, but there's no way I'm sending my kid to SAR.
Trump won the election here, by the way.
No, I'm just saying that position, I understand somebody who says, I prefer Frisch.
Yeah.
Totally get it. But somebody who's like adamant,
Yeah.
I wouldn't let my kid in that school. It feels weird to me because I just don't, as somebody who had kids in both the schools and seeing them both, like I just don't think
They're not that different.
Right. I don't see. Now, if you said to me, I'm not sending my kid to Frisch or SAR, I'm only sending my boy to MTA or TABC, that I understand.
Yeah.
Whether I
Because that's a different
right,
spectrum.
that I totally get.
I think that, we're Young Israel Scarsdale people, and Young Israel Scarsdale is more to the left progressive end of the spectrum in the more modern Orthodox world. So I've never heard a hint of that kind of criticism implied or otherwise about, oh, how could you send your kid there? It's not an issue for us.
But we did have Mara. This is just to bring it back to Caleb's question, where when we heard the article came out, Mara was quite upset.
So to provide context, my daughter, Mara, is, she completed her IDF service. She made Aliyah. She lives in Israel. Hi, Mara. And she was upset as an Israeli now who served in the Army to read an article in the Buzz that was not as pro-Israel or pro the war effort as certainly she would have liked. And, I understand that as somebody who served in the Army and gave so much. And she also has a fiance who's actually right now in a tank in Gaza. And Ty, if you listen to this ever, we're praying for you. Hope you're safe. It can draw a reaction, understandably, for the kids who did serve. But that's a whole other podcast about, what dialogue should be permitted. And, the fact that they did allow an opposing view, I'm not sure is necessarily a bad thing in my view.
I mean, I would say if you're that hyped up about the article and you really believe it shouldn't have run and you think it's like the worst thing in the world, I would pause and say, like, what did you think you were doing when you came to SAR? Like, that would be number one. Number two, I would say, and so you guys would say that SAR has been full on upping the pro-Israel. Yeah. So they're walking the walk.
It's hard to even up it.
I'm saying this is a school that's is bleeding blue and white in so many ways all the time, and you can't say, oh, they're not really showing a pro-Israel streak. This is about how you handle a voice that's coming at it from a different issue. And I would, with humility, suggest that you guys, if you love SAR, like the thing didn't just show up, right? Like starting with Rabbi Hartstark and all the other administrators and teachers, there's like an alchemy to this, a chemistry to this, where they built something, and I think you guys kind of show up, and everybody takes for granted the nature of the place, the style of the place, the ethos of the place, but all those things you love exist because they are the same people. Everything you love about SAR is a product of the exact same thing that then lets them run that kid's article.
I don't defend the substance of I did read the article. I don't defend the substance of the article, but I do think it's probably a positive thing to have published it because in terms of this grand conversation, look, we're talking about it. It causes kids and adults to think about these issues. And you have to remember that if everybody has the same opinion, then generally nobody's thinking.
Yeah.
So the fact that somebody has a different opinion, whether you agree with that opinion or not, that kid who wrote the article, you may not agree with the kid, but the kid's thinking, okay? And the kid has a different opinion than another kid. And so now you have to have a conversation, to try to persuade each other or at least understand each other's perspective. So I think, from my understanding of the grand conversation, that's sort of the root of it. That's what SAR wants. They want to have dialogue. They want to have analytical, critical thinking. And I think that's important, not only for a high school like this, but when you go to college or when you go to your year in Israel, that's what it's all about, to grow and to think and to analyze and to disagree. So I think, in my opinion, it's all to the good.
I mean, we always say, how strong can your view or faith be in something if it's never challenged?
Right.
We talk about that a lot. And we think SAR does a really good job of challenging.
Yeah.
And this would be my line. Like you asked if I'm worried about if I have to defend SAR. To me, the only red line I'm worried about where I might say, oh, maybe the school went too far, when Richie Torres comes out and says, I don't think I can visit SAR anymore because they're running anti-Israel articles. No,
Oh,
he
that
didn't.
would be.
I'm saying that's the only thing. I don't care if a bunch of
I thought you were making news.
No.
Yeah,
I don't care if a bunch of frish parents say,
Yeah.
that would never happen here. But if Richie Torres says, what's going on at SAR, then I might say, okay, we gotta take stock a little bit.
We love Richie.
God bless Richie Torres.
He's the man.
Caleb's heard this
My dad's
before.
been pushing
But
to get him on the podcast.
First of all, I don't know how Richie Torres has not been invited on this podcast. That's number one. Number two, this is my favorite, only in SAR. There's this whole contingent of guys you ask, who's your favorite politician? Donald Trump. Who's your second favorite politician? Richie Torres.
Yeah.
The Torres.
I mean,
the Trump
SAR,
Torres
the first answer
ticket.
you're probably getting is Richie Torres.
Oh, you've met who you
He's
put away.
basically a part of our school now. He's there every other month.
So he's one of the
Staff
co-principals?
member.
He's good. Right.
Well, if you really want to mix it up, you could have Alan Dershowitz and Jamal Bauman on the pod. I'm kidding.
Right. So I want to.
That may be a little too heated.
I've been a faithful listener to the pod. I do want to roast and toast Saul on one thing having to do with a grand conversation topic: dress code. This was my favorite part of the whole podcast.
With which pot? With
I guess it was the one with Dr. Schwartz. Am I allowed to say my nickname for Dr. Schwartz on the pod?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Otherwise known as the lady with the hats.
yeah, that's fair.
60 hats is a lot of hats.
Yeah, and that's probably an underestimate.
So you're talking to her about dress code, and you're like, I probably never really followed the dress code ever. You're going on and on, and then you quickly transition to the next point where you go, I just don't understand why the girls can't just wear longer skirts.
I know.
And it's like, but you just went on saying you never followed the dress code.
No. There's a difference between not following it and also not complaining when you get
Yeah, that's what
an email for it.
I told you that was
and
the
then
difference.
also not following it and then ruthlessly complaining about it. I don't follow it, but if I get a dress code, I'm like, okay, I got a dress code.
Yeah.
I don't care. But it happens to be that the girls at the school get really annoyed with the dress code, and I kind of get it. A lot of them think maybe it feels a little uncomfortable to always be looked up and down, which we're not.
Right.
And the girls' dress code is way more enforced, and Dr. Schwartz touched on that a lot.
She had some very good points. Which, by the way, I went away saying, I get why they might want to have longer skirts, but also let girls wear pants. It was a good, she was really, she brought a lot of
she
good.
said the in school versus out of school. I mean,
Right,
that has
especially
that clip
when
has
it's
the most views on Reels.
it does. Especially when it's not just kids out of school, but also faculty out of school that do it as well.
It felt like there are a couple different, there's what's part of your dress code is about halakha, what part of the dress code is about halakhic standards and what are those for boys and what are those for girls, and then part of it is also, and you got at this a little bit, so what is it that you just want everybody to be a little fancier, because a little more formal, and those are actually two different things, but sometimes they get lumped together. So you could have a situation where you might say, girls could actually feel more comfortable wearing pants, and they could wear pants that were appropriate from a fancy versus we're not going to, and nobody's wearing sweatpants, and that might be okay on one, but maybe not okay halakhically or the other way around. So I thought that whole discussion you guys had was really
We
interesting.
never got into the women Tefillin thing. Should we go back to that?
Yeah, I mean,
because I have a little different view that you might find interesting, which is not exactly mainstream. There was on your prior podcast, you're talking about there are 4 girls in the school put on Tefillin, and the reason they're allowed to do it, according to Rabbi Hartstock, halakhically, is because they did it since their bat mitzvah, etc. So I'm actually going all the way to the extreme. I think the school should require every girl to put on Tefillin every morning. Everyone. Just kidding. Okay, you can edit that out.
Keeping that.
All right, now that
no, edit out the part where he said just kidding.
Okay, so you roasted Saul. I have to roast Caleb.
Please.
Caleb, You made the egregious, horrendous statement about Jalen
I knew that was
Brunson
coming.
of the New York Knicks.
Pacers in 5.
Saying,
Pacers.
Caleb
Pacers
said
will.
in a
I'll tell you why the Pacers will win.
Hold on. You
He's
got to get roast
roasting.
first.
Okay.
Don't interrupt the roast.
Right.
So Jalen Brunson, according to Caleb, could not be a number 1 on a championship team because he's a 6'1" guard. Oh my goodness. He is just a force, a tour de force. The Knicks may win the championship with him. And also, I want to refer you, young man, to Isaiah Thomas.
Different
1989,
times. Different time.
1990.
The
Different
exception
time,
is not
different
the
I,
rule.
by the way,
schmime.
I said since for a while.
No,
besides
Curry
since
is the
80s.
exception. He is not the rule. Isaiah
Curry's-
Thomas
and
was
Isaiah-
not
No,
of the
but
same
Curry's
magnitude.
also bigger. Isn't Curry
Yeah,
like
Curry is
6'4"?
Yeah, but he's-
6'3".
Right.
I mean,
but
even
also-
Magic Johnson was 6'9".
That doesn't
Wow,
count.
that's a different.
Isaiah Thomas was the leader of that team, but he didn't. He wasn't a Brunson in the same.
Also,
sense.
Joe Dumars
oh
won
my
it.
gosh! When he
No.
needed to be,
He wasn't putting up 37.
Yeah, Joe
What,
Dumars
he-
won
sevens.
it.
He
Look
wasn't.
up-
He
look
wasn't
up.
going ISO the whole time. in the
When
quarter.
Isaiah- when Isaiah-
Game 6, 1987.
Yes, he rolled his
Finals.
ankle,
Rolled his
poked
ankle,
his eye.
scored like 30 points in the quarter.
Isaiah-
he could.
Isaiah
he was
Thomas-
a smart player, he distributed, but he could go off when they needed it.
And he was Isaiah Thomas back in the day. When he wanted to be the best player on the floor, he was the best player on the floor. And actually, I saw an interview with him, and he made a great point. Michael Jordan never beat Bird and the Celtics, and Michael Jordan never beat Magic and Kareem. Isaiah did.
No, he did. Larry Bird.
No.
That's why LeBron's a goat.
Larry Bird beat Matt. Wait. Oh,
No, Jordan never beat
Yeah, because
Bird.
Kareem wasn't on
Yes,
the
correct.
team
I
in
got myself-
'91, right,
correct.
when the Bulls
Got
played
it.
them. But
Confused.
I'll tell you why the Pacers are going to win this series. It's very simple.
I'm gonna agree with
Every
you.
starter on the Knicks has been averaging above 40 minutes a game. No one on the Pacers has averaged more than 35 minutes a game. That's what's going to come. It's
The
going to
wear
come
and
down
tear,
to.
and also I genuinely do believe that the Pacers just, when you watch them, they control the pace of the game in every game they're in. And not that the Knicks necessarily don't. I just think that having Tyrese Halliburton at the helm for the Pacers gives them a sense of control along with his passing that the Knicks don't really have. The Knicks don't. They have Brunson as a playmaker, but he's not the best creator of plays for others.
I'd say if
Also coaching.
if Karl
Anti-Semitism,
Anthony Towns produces and plays like a superstar, I think the Knicks will win. If he doesn't, they won't.
Oh, but I'm curious. Are you not a Heat fan like Saul? Are you a Knicks fan?
Knicks
No,
fan.
I'm a Knicks fan. Actually, I'm a Knicks fan since I'm 5 years old. Saul's only a Heat fan because those were the games that we took him to when we would go to his Bubby and Zadie in Miami.
It's hard to be a 4-year-old
when he
going to
grew
a
up.
LeBron game and not be a Heat
Yeah.
fan.
I definitely
So
resonate.
that's how he became a Heat fan. Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about the old days, as the older people on this podcast right now, I'm assuming you guys both think Michael Jordan is the GOAT.
Oh, there's not even a question.
Yeah, certainly.
Is there a debate?
Yeah,
It's
I think
LeBron.
that's a hard thing. And certainly, as opposed to LeBron, it's like...
I'd say number 2 is Kobe.
Really?
You actually think it's
Such a
Kobe?
bad comment.
Yeah.
I
That
feel
I'm so
people...
embarrassed you just
I
said
feel
that.
people are
I don't know.
selling
People
Magic.
listen to
I
this
think people sell
podcast.
Magic short in the
Oh
discussion.
my God.
LeBron is objectively
Magic's not even the
number
best
two.
point guard of all time.
I'm just saying.
Could go on. I think Magic is like at the back end of the top 10. I also don't think Kobe's
The
top
problem
5.
is
I think Kobe's like
The
6 or
problem is
7.
some of these players like Magic, because he was such a smart player, he was not fully pushing all of his skills and talents, right? He's distributing the ball. He could score,
But did he?
but he didn't need to. He
won
had
his rings,
Kareem.
Well,
He's
he played well. One thing about Magic that is like a unicorn is he could play every position.
right. If you had five
played 1 through
Magics,
5.
if you had 5 Magics play against almost any other version of 5 players, you're
Nope.
going to do pretty
LeBron
well.
I'm taking
James
a 5
would win
LeBron
easily.
as the.
Okay.
LeBron is Magic plus elite
No,
scoring.
he's at 1 year he was Steph plus Shaq, and
Right.
at like 2017 finals, like percentage wise, was like shooting 45% from 3, which is better than Curry, and like 75%
It's all
from the
about
paint, which was better
it's
than
that one little
Shaq.
piece in the brain, right? Meaning,
If you don't think LeBron has killer mentality, I could go off.
I
right
think
now.
no. I think Jordan's an insane man.
LeBron one time. Because
LeBron's
there's a
a better-
podcast about this. It's 2015. They're down 2-1 in the series. They drop a play, not for LeBron.
is the
LeBron
Bulls
says, "Give me the
series, yeah.
board."
No, I'm not.
Wipes away the play. Goes, I'm going to fake it. I'm going to go out. You're going to pass me. I'm going to hit the three. Doesn't.
And let's be clear. I hate Jordan. And I like
good.
LeBron.
Good. Okay. That's
But Jordan.
Why you hate
So I tell you,
because I hated that he was that good.
Oh, that's
and I rooted against him.
even as a Knicks fan, I love Jordan just because he's like a godlike figure, and
Black
was just
Jesus.
so talented. But I think the difference between Jordan and LeBron, and even like a Kobe and LeBron, Jordan and Kobe were not nice guys. They were killers. LeBron's a nice guy.
Right. It's
And
as a
you can't-
human, it's a
Oh my
kind
God.
of.
Who cares?
You can't take that away.
No, but he's saying that's the
A
difference.
nice guy. Oh my God! One
this
time
is
in the
what my dad
playoffs,
hates.
or who was it? It was Austin Rivers. Like accidentally hit the ball at LeBron's head.
Oh,
LeBron
he's-
turned around. Austin Rivers like,
He was scared. Yeah, I remember. It was like a regular season, but
Not
yeah.
a- bro-
But that's why my dad hates Yeshivli because we're all buddy now. But
we're
that-
not,
that
by the
just-
way. My good friend Pacey Jacoby missed his layup. I screamed at him the whole way down the floor.
That's the second time we called out Pacey.
Because
for missing
I
a
like to
layup.
call out Pacey. I hope Pacey listens. But I can't believe what you just said.
Back to Tefillin. I think the fact that what makes SAR is that it's a place where there's a handful of girls who are wearing Tefillin, and that's if we imposed your plan, then it would feel a very different place, and probably would feel outside an Orthodox or modern Orthodox framework, but in a yeshiva league with how many Orthodox high schools? A lot. To have one where the handful of girls who feel truly like religiously motivated and obligated to do that. That's like if not SAR, then where? And that's part of again, when you choose SAR, you're gonna have. And one of the things that makes SAR is that it wants you to learn to live with things that are a little ambiguous or a little different, or as you were saying before about learning to live with something that feels off to you or wrong in a minority opinion in this bigger discussion.
To be serious about the issue as opposed to how I was before about it when I was kidding, I think that the way I analyze the issue about women wearing tefillin is the way I analyze a lot of Jewish practice. The question is, what's the harm? So if you ask yourself, what's the harm? Is there harm in a woman, a girl, student putting on tefillin if she wants to and it's important to her? And the only harm that I can imagine is that there's this prohibition of, what is it, Kol Isha, a man is not supposed to dress like a woman.
That's Beged Isha and Beged Ish.
Beged Isha is the dressing. Like
I
a man
think
would.
the
Well,
problem.
let me
I have-
finish the
okay.
point, though. So, is that could be the only halakhic issue that I'm aware of, is that you're not supposed to dress like the opposite sex. But if that's not an issue, and I think Rabbi Hartstark has decided that it's not prohibitive, then what is the harm in it if somebody wants to take on that mitzvah if they're a girl? I personally, it doesn't bother me.
Can I tell you the problem with that argument is that then it just opens the door for so many things. What is the harm in me not wearing tefillin? What's the harm? If I feel more comfortable davening without wearing tefillin, what's the harm?
Well, because you're commanded to do it.
Okay, but they're not commanded to do it, and there is a commandment that you should do all your obligations of mitzvah before you start doing things that you aren't obligated to do, and they're not obligated.
But let's acknowledge that whether you and I'm not a halakhic expert, clearly Rabbi Hartstark and whoever made this decision, they're framing it within a halakhic framework that they're saying it can be justified.
Because there's no technical prohibition.
Right. So but it was treated. He didn't say, you're comfortable with. Like, he made a halakhic analysis, and yeah, it's a very minority view. But that's SAR's role in this constellation.
So here's the analogy. So my father-in-law passed away in December, and so my wife, your mother, is saying Kaddish every morning in shul. Now, she's not commanded to do it. She's not a man. Her brother is doing it in New Jersey. She doesn't have to do it. She decided she wants to do it. It's important to her, and she's doing it. So to me, that's the same sort of analysis. And it's not that she's saying Kaddish without a man also saying Kaddish. I don't believe she's not permitted to do that in our synagogue. But as long as there's a man also saying Kaddish, you can say the Kaddish on the other side of the Mechitza as a woman, and I don't think that's harming anybody, and it's very important to her, and I'm all for that.
Well, I think you kind of answer your own question by saying it's only when the man a man to say Kaddish, then she could say it also. Then if you want to say, if she's the only one saying Kaddish, then that would be more similar to the woman's Tefillin. What you're saying is that wouldn't have been allowed. And I think it's definitely noteworthy that obviously Rabbi Harkstark is like, but I wouldn't tell my daughters to do it.
But
And he wouldn't allow, and if you didn't start wearing tefillin after bat mitzvah, like 16-year-old came in,
he doesn't want someone to do it because they're making a statement, which I think is also a very important thing.
It's a halacha. Here's my question to the two of you, because you guys seem like on this, you're on the more traditionalist side. If Rabbi Harkstark analyzes it halachically, and he believes in those limited situations that you talked about, that they had taken it on themselves, they've been doing it since bat mitzvah, etc. If he believes, after his analysis, that it's halachically justified, should he allow it? Meaning, if I understand you may think he made the wrong halachic decision, but sometimes you guys in this podcast, you guys have touched upon the issue of how sometimes you have to be out there in the world defending SAR. But ultimately, if Rabbi Harkstark thinks this is the right thing to do halachically, given all the factors, even if it makes your lives difficult or you uncomfortable, is that the decision he should make? Or should he say, oh, my guys are going to get roasted when they're hanging out with their TABC and Frisch buddies. I shouldn't allow these girls to do it.
I think it's just people like that.
I'm not sure about the first situation. It's just a weird situation because we are the only one that does it. So that just makes you want to know.
I honestly never really thought about it.
Genuinely
he should make that call.
Yeah, if he genuinely believes it's.
But I'm not gonna. I don't have to agree with it.
No, you don't have to agree with it. But if
in his perspective,
don't you guys believe that that he's coming to it with integrity, right?
Yeah, I don't think he does
Rabbi Harkstark makes
so what
every
I'm saying is once you add the
very much intention and purpose.
So once you add those two things together,
more than twice about
that he's coming to it. What I'm saying is you guys then, I know you guys want to be here, and I'm not saying love it or leave it, but I'm saying the guy, he made it, he had an issue in front of him, he approached it with a halachic framework, he came to a conclusion, and then acted the way you're saying he should act if he came to that conclusion. Yeah. So it might stink, you might not like it.
Kind of got me stuck because it's so true.
I want to push back, Caleb, on the our Kaddish issue before, and I understand that I'm not aware of any modern Orthodox synagogue that would permit a woman to say Kaddish without a man also saying Kaddish. But the question is, why not, and what's the harm? Let's say there isn't a man saying Kaddish, which sometimes does happen, especially in smaller synagogues. What is the harm with a woman on the other side of the mechitza who had a father, a mother pass, who wants to say Kaddish? What's the harm in her saying it and having the men answer on the other side of the mechitza? What do you think the halachic issue is with it?
I don't know what the halachic issue is, but there's clearly a reason why every Orthodox shul has it that way. I'm not sure what the reason is. So all I'm saying is I think the comparison of your wife being able to say Kaddish with a man but not allowed when there's not a man, that's not this. Like when it's with a man, that's very different than the Tefillin issue, but then if it's without a man, it's much more similar to the Tefillin issue, in my opinion.
Right, but so the question becomes, and nobody here is a halachic scholar.
So therefore, we should all weigh in.
Right.
Very adamant.
That's what we do as Americans. We weigh in heavily on issues that we don't know much about.
And there's an inverse relationship. Yeah. The less you know, the more emphatic you can be.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, to end off the pod, we asked this question just like we have a beginning question. If there's one thing about SAR you'd like to change,
I know
what would it be?
You should know it.
Cost of tuition?
A criticism or something you wish SAR did better or a change you wish SAR could make?
Remind me.
Really? My dad always says how it's the biggest shame that we're not fluent in Hebrew.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to get on my soapbox. The fact that we spend all this money from kindergarten, before kindergarten, all the way through 12th grade, with half the time spent on Jewish education, every single one of our kids should come out of these schools speaking Hebrew. It can be done. It's done in Flatbush. It's done in other places. And that's really a crime that our kids don't all come out speaking Hebrew. I fortunately have a daughter who made Aliyah, whose Hebrew was good enough coming out of these schools where she's now fluent, but she had to live in Israel to become fluent. And I have two boys who really can't speak a lick.
No, I can speak
and it's a shame.
How did you get my dad? You turned into my dad on this podcast. And then his joke would always be, if we ever said anything in Hebrew, he'd say, $700 a word.
Right. So that's an improvement. That it's not just that's not an SAR thing. That's a modern Orthodox New York metropolitan area issue that I think should be fixed, and all our kids should come out of here after spending the millions of dollars on their education speaking Hebrew.
Or at least proficient.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. It also might take some, you might have to stomach some poor grids, which is also, I'm sure, what happens. Like if you
Yeah, because it would have to
you'd have to tighten it up.
If you want us to be really good at Hebrew, we would have to work way harder in Hebrew, and in that way,
and raise the standard, and people are gonna.
But I'm saying all this other stuff we're gonna like the general studies would probably have to go like this.
Yeah, I think that's probably the reason why it is how it is, because Hebrew.
Or I mean, you could also like lower the
there's also
level of Gemara
classes,
we do in the Tanakh because we have 9 Gemaras a week.
No, well, the question is, this is the question which I don't know the answer to, because you're saying other people do it, Flatbush. Do you guys walk out of here knowing more Gemara and Nach than the kid who goes to Flatbush?
I don't know.
I mean, if the or whatever,
That I don't
is there a
know.
school where people walk out speaking fluent Hebrew and they know just as much Gemara as you? Because if that's
I
the
honestly don't
case,
know.
then you should be able to do it. If you say, it's a different thing if you say, look, we make a trade-off, which is we want our kids to be as fluent in the deeper issues. We want that to lean into that and not get so fixated or have it as a barrier that they can't speak Hebrew fluently. That's an interesting educational.
Sure, it's a trade-off.
Trade-off.
They're kind of
Take out Spanish.
could also take out Spanish.
If you have a
second
mandate, I think the mandate that you have to learn a second language, but if everyone's
have
already learning
Hebrew.
Hebrew, I'm pretty sure that counts as a second language.
Right.
I mean, you don't want to speak too loud because the foreign language office is right next to us. But
Right.
I mean, Dad, you have anything else?
Yeah,
or-
so I'm going to give one, and this isn't really, it's not, let me make it very clear. It's not only about SAR. So this is all Yeshiva League.
Okay.
And I feel especially adamant about it now that I listened to the Rabbi Kroll episode when he made his defense of the rule against negative booing at games. I don't understand in 2025, and let me stress again, this is not a unique SAR issue. I've watched many Yeshiva League games, many schools, many coaches. If the whole idea is we can be a little countercultural, I just don't understand why coaches yell at players.
Coaches yell at players?
If the players, we're saying to the student body, you can't boo or you can't have negative cheering because we're going to have like a countercultural approach. There's a certain level of yelling from coaches or type of yelling that I would say I don't understand. Saying like, guys, you got to play tougher D is okay. But really getting mad at a single guy because he blows his assignment. And again, the worst coaches I've seen do it aren't even it's not even at SAR. I'm always kind of amazed.
I'm gonna be honest.
And
most of the time,
And most of the time, what I really believe is most of the time, it's like I don't know if I'm using this term, like an ego transference or something. Like what the coach is really doing is, it feels to me, is they're embarrassed and they're taking it out on the kid rather than it's like a constructive way of making the player.
I think it's just you have to find the balance.
Yeah, I messed up a play in Globerman and got taken out for it because I just completely messed up the play. It ended up being a turnover.
That's not yelling at you.
No. Let me finish. I get to the bench. Ravi takes me out and is in my face telling me, what are you doing? You got to be better than this. And then as he's getting that up, he starts to explain to me exactly what I need to do to be better. But the thing is, when you make a mistake, you're not almost none. If you're a player that is playing, you've earned your spot. You are almost never not sure what you did wrong to the point where you need like really constructive criticism. You normally know. If you mess up a play, you know. If you miss a wide open layup, you know. If in baseball you get picked off on the bases, you know, like, yeah, I just can't get picked off.
But also you're consistent because you're saying the fans should be able to yell at you and the coaches should be able to.
I think
so
the
I'm
biggest
laughing.
problem is the
It could go either way.
consistency
I'm saying it's
problem.
a weird inconsistency.
You're right.
Why are they
I
worried
think-
about you guys booing an air ball, but not worried about a coach. Yeah, like to me, it's such a weird disconnect.
To me, I see them as completely separate. The fan thing, which I think is actually a positive thing, because I just don't see the value in taunting other kids. I like the idea that you're rooting for your own team and you're not taunting other kids. I don't think it's classy. I don't think it benefits anybody. I think you can get psyched up in other ways. In terms of the coaching thing, I do disagree a little bit because I think that when a coach yells, hopefully they're yelling because they're passionate about what they're doing and they really care not only about the team, but about the kid playing up to their potential. And if they feel like the kid is not giving everything they have or listening, or et cetera, they want the kid to really do better. And the yelling is in that spirit because of the caring. And this is not analogous because you guys aren't pros, but if you look at the best coaches in professional sports or college sports, you look at the Bill Parcells, you look at the Bobby Knights.
But then
you look at these people.
But if you
these
look
people
at like
are
a Larry
insane.
Brown that goes a little too extreme, and then they have success, but then they get run out in places early. So I think balance is a key.
I'm also being a little provocative here. And as somebody who played in high school sports, I never mind. I never mind.
I don't know.
No,
I think a coach will scream at a player, like you've experienced this. Remember Mag and David tournament? Robbie's not screaming at you because Robbie's screaming at you because he knows you can be better.
Exactly. And I think
or me too. Or my
I know.
No, I think
I'm
the biggest.
I'm trying to.
No, but I
stir
think
up
the
a little
biggest thing that we mentioned with Jaffe, that it's very important at the beginning to establish that relationship with the coach. So then, even when sometimes you think the screaming is a little too much, you know already.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that
also,
it's
when I'm
for
watching
the
other
good.
games, other teams, I don't have a feel for the relationship with the coach with the players. So when I see that coach yell at a player, I don't have a feel for the credibility that coach has with the player. It just seems to me like some random guy yelling at like players.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what's that? Now, on the negative cheering, I'll just say I happen to be a believer in the general principle that if something's funny, it trumps all else.
I agree.
So
Amen.
and especially so the chant that should never be not allowed was the Kroll's better than C.
Yeah, by the way, we technically don't allow
that's just funny.
We allow
that's
it.
just funny.
We allow it when we're in the Frisch building.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
All right.
I think that was a great episode.
Yeah, that was
Thank
awesome.
you guys for
Guys,
coming on.
I just want to say, this has been like watching it seriously. Like you guys have been amazing.
You guys are our biggest fans.
Yeah,
And
every
also,
episode.
I hope you're being very like appreciative to the faculty and the students that have been on there. Because
Caleb
part of
sent
the
a very
reason,
nice
right? Because part of the
Yeah.
reason your show has been as successful
Because
is
they bought
because
in,
of the
yeah, for
generosity of spirit that they're bringing.
Yeah.
Like
Sure.
I'm kind of amazed at how seemingly open they're being in the questions, and it makes
Totally.
you guys are right. You guys are asking great questions, but it would be a pretty boring podcast if they were
There's
like.
always a worry that they're just going to be like, we don't want to talk about
Right.
that. But
Yeah,
they
we're
always
not
do.
doing that.
We're very
Yeah.
thankful.
I want to just sort of echo what Ami said. The fact that you guys, 17, 18 years old, can do a podcast like this and be so authentic, genuine, easygoing with it. You've made it look really easy. You've interviewed high-level people, Rabbi Kroll, Big Mike, Dr. Schwartz, and you've had these really intricate conversations about secular issues, Judaic issues, halachic issues, sports, and you really both have talent. And whether you do podcasting
get
in
it
the
from our
future
dads.
or you do something else, these skills that you're developing here are going to be a big credit to both of you.
Now, if parent-teachers conferences were like this podcast,
All right. Thank you guys so much for coming on. This has been the SAR Experience with Saul and Caleb. See you guys.